Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, The Power of Excel. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about different types of referencing styles which are usually used in Microsoft Excel. Typically, in Microsoft Excel, there are three different types of referencing styles: relative referencing, which is the default referencing style, absolute referencing, and mixed referencing. There are certain characteristics which are associated with each of these referencing styles. So let me take you through all of these characteristics. So relative referencing style has both the rows and the columns as fixed or variable, which means that the references changes relatively as we drag a formula downwards, upwards, left, or right. We are going to demonstrate all of this with the help of examples, so you don't need to worry as such. So the format typically which we use for a relative reference is something like C4, where C4 might be a cell which might contain some kind of a value. Then when you talk about absolute referencing style, so absolute referencing style has both rows and columns as fixed, which means that the reference remains fixed as we drag a formula downward, upward, left, or right. This is denoted by $C$4, where both the column and the row are fixed. That is, this reference will not change when we're dragging the formula from top to bottom or from left to right or vice versa. Then we have the mixed referencing style, which are of two types, type 1 and type 2. In type 1, the row is fixed and the column is variable. That means that the reference remains fixed when we drag the formula upward or downward. And the reference changes relatively when we drag the formula left or right. That is due to a change in the column. So the format or the syntax that we use for this kind of a referencing style is something like C$4, where the column is variable and the row is fixed. That is, row 4 is fixed. Then we have the type 2 referencing style in mixed referencing, that is, column is fixed and the row is variable. In this case, reference remains fixed when we drag the formula left or right, and the reference changes relatively when we drag the formula upward or downwards. That is due to a change in the row number. This is usually denoted with the help of something like $C4, where the row is movable or flexible or variable and the column is fixed. Let us demonstrate all these three referencing styles with the help of certain examples. So coming to the first example, we're going to demonstrate the relative referencing style. So this is a very simple case wherein we have taken 6 different values of principal, rate, and time, and we want to calculate the simple interest for each of these values. So typically, as you know, for calculating the simple interest, the formula is principal into rate into time divided by 100. So since the divide by 100 component is already considered in the rate component here, so we are not going to divide by 100. So we're going to simply multiply these three values. So let's start doing it. This is equal to principal into rate into time. So as you do this, as you can see, the references which are coming here is B4 into C4 into D4. And when we drag this down, you'll see the change in the references, and I'll show you that as well. So this comes out to be 10,000, and if we drag it down, we'll get the remaining values here. Now, the important thing to note over here is how the references are changing. So for having a look at the formulas on Excel sheet itself, there is a very good functionality in Microsoft Excel, that is show formulas under the formulas tab. So if you go to the formulas tab and click on show formulas, you will get to see all the formulas which are there in your typical Excel sheet. So as you can see here, in case of simple interest column, you have the first row as P4 into C4 into D4. And as we have dragged this down, the references have changed to B5 into C5 into D5, B6, C6, D6, and so on and so forth. This is a case of relative referencing, wherein all the three parameters as principal, rate, and time are changing as you're moving from top to down. So let me disable the show formulas. Now let us move to the absolute referencing. So in case of absolute referencing, we have made certain changes to the same data which we have used for relative referencing. The only change being that the rate of interest right now, which we are considering, is constant, whereas the principal and the time period are going to change. So we are going to use the same formula here, that is principal into the rate into the time period. Now, since we want to keep the rate of interest as fixed, what we need to do is we need to change this from relative reference to the absolute reference. For doing that, in a typical Windows environment, the shortcut we have for doing this is function plus F4, or in certain cases, even F4 also works. For Mac systems, the shortcut is command plus T. Although I don't have that system with me right now, but you can always try that out. So command plus T is a shortcut. And there will be certain more shortcuts which we'll be using in Excel. And I'll be having a separate session on that to discuss all the different types of shortcuts which we can use. So this is what we need to do in this particular case. If we drag this down, we get the values for the remaining rows. But the important thing to note over here is the change in the references. If we again go to the formulas tab and click on show formulas, you get to see the formulas on this particular Excel sheet. So as you can see, B6 has changed to B7 to B8 to B9 because this is the relative referencing style. Whereas the rate of interest, which is $C$2, has remained static when we have copied the formula from the first row to the last row. That is how the absolute referencing style works. Again, and as you can see, for time period, again, it is relative reference. And as you're moving down, it is changing relatively. So let me move to the next referencing style, that is a mixed referencing style. In this particular case, we have made some changes to the same data which we have used for relative and absolute referencing. Only thing is the principal is changing as we are moving from top to down, and the time period is changing as we're moving from left to right. And the rate of interest, as in the case of absolute referencing, will remain fixed at 6%. So let us try and perform calculations for calculating the simple interest. Let us apply the formula there. So the formula that we need to apply over here is, this is the principal multiplied by the rate of interest. So since we want the absolute references here, so we'll press control plus F4 function plus F4 once to get the absolute reference multiplied by the time period, that is 4. Now, in this particular scenario, what we want is that the principal should change as we move from top to bottom. That is B6 should change as we move from top to bottom. So that means that the rows should change, but the column should not change. So for doing that, what we need to do is we need to change this to the mixed reference with column fixed and row movable. Click on function plus F4 once, twice, thrice. Now the column is fixed, that is column B is fixed, and the row is movable. So when we move it down, this formula will automatically get replicated for the remaining value of the principal amounts. While when we move it from left to right, this principal value will not change for time periods 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And very soon I'm going to demonstrate that as well. Coming to the time period, that is the cell C5. Now C5 needs to change when we move from left to right, but it should not change when move from top to bottom. So in such a scenario, we'll change this to the mixed referencing style quickly by clicking on function plus F4 twice. Twice. This is absolute reference, and this is mixed reference 1, wherein column is movable and the row is fixed. So once we do this and click enter, we get the value, that is 12,000. Now, if we try dragging it down, we'll get the simple interest for the principal amount 50,000 to 1 lakh, and for the time period that is 4 years. And if we drag this towards the right, we'll see that we get values, the correct values for uh, all the different time periods which we have. So these are the values which we have received. And if you want to check the formulas here, you can see that. I'll enable the show formulas tab for you to enable to see how these have changed. So as you can see, when we have moved from top to bottom, the cell B6 has changed to B7, B8, B9, B10, B11. And when we have dragged it towards the right, this reference has not changed because the column is fixed. Right? That is, the principal has become fixed because we have used this referencing style here. But in case of the time period, that is cell C$5, when we have moved it from top to bottom, this has remained constant. That this has not changed. That is the value 4. But when we have moved from left to right, these values have changed from C5 to D5 to E$5 to F$5 to G$5 and so on. That means from 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. So that is what we do when we use the mixed referencing. So these are very important set of referencing style, which are very much important when we apply different kinds of functions and formulas and on different data sets. I hope you like this video. And if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to this particular channel. Thank you so much and have a nice day. See you soon in the next video. Thank you so much.